Hello, everyone. I'm John Coleman from Apocatastasis, an institute for the humanities and alternative college and high school here on New Milford, Connecticut, USA. The purpose of this three-way chat, a little bit different than normal, is to look at belonging in modernity. And I'm being joined by Miss Mmabatho Montse from South Africa and Mr. Ryan Veli from Canada. And how are you both doing?
I'm great, John. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm well as well, John. Thank you. And Mmabatho, it's wonderful to speak with you both, and I'm looking forward to our chat today.
And perhaps beginning with Mmabatho and then turning to Ryan, if you could tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll get into our topic at hand, belonging in modernity.
Thank you again for having me on your shows, both of you guys. Um, I think really my journey and what inspires me is really my own ideas around how a different reality might look like. And it has taken me quite a bit of time and a lot of heartache to get to a point where I do not speak about the human condition from a place of, uh, you know, um, my own lived experience, in a sense that coming to realize the material outcomes of colonization, not only on my family. My mother was born in Lesotho, her grandmother was born in Botswana. There was a lot of migration, a lot of loss or forgetting of, our traditions. There are many experiences. I sometimes feel like I would have made me a better person or experienced life in a more nurturing way had our knowledge systems been kept in place, had we not had the disturbance of colonization and everything that comes with it. Because for me, as a Black African woman, I am affected by patriarchy, by gender in different ways. And so coming to understand my lived experience, awakening to that, because our education system does not really get to, uh, tell a real history. So it becomes quite an eventful experience. It becomes an awakening, that for me was accompanied by actual initiation into our Ubungoma traditions. That means becoming a Sangoma, meaning a person who is trained to communicate with ancestors, to divine, to remember. So it kind of like heightened a lot of my experiences. And looking back now from a different place, I can see how, as humanity, we have a shared deep wound, that cuts across the illusion of race.
Great, thank you for that, Mmabatho, and we'll certainly revisit those very insightful points. And Ryan, tell us a bit about yourself, and we'll proceed from there.
My history spans the US military as well as academia and the business world, as well as many other interests on the side, including sustainable agriculture, living soils, these types of biosystems as well. So I categorize myself as being an analyst and specifically a systems analyst, and everything operates as a system. And when I started to be awakened to realities about the fraudulence of our history and so many other things in our culture, I started to realize that there was almost like an immune system on the planet that was activating individuals that were scattered across the globe, regardless of race, gender, any of these things. And they were starting to push back and to investigate the things that we've been lied to about. And we all take our own unique form, but we're all working towards the same end. And to that end is the evolution of humanity, not the devolution, which we've seen. We've devolved into forgetting our history, breaking away from the earth, and using everything that's an artificial replica of what already exists in an abundant and prosperous nature. And this has been done intentionally. So my interest in Mbatha is obviously that she is doing incredible things in South Africa, and she is part of the planetary or human immune system responding to the totalitarian takeover and the horrible things that are being done. So I encourage and support everybody like Mbatha and others and John and all of you wonderful people who are out there trying to enlighten and raise the consciousness in the planet and bring some kind of semblance of sanity back to this clown world that we seem to be living in right now. Thank you.
Great. And we might move now to our definitions of modernity and maybe the ills and positive things as well. But because this is a little bit different, this sort of discussion, it's more indeed of a roundtable than typically on this series on the Apocatastasis end of things. From my angle, very much into what Mmabatho and Ryan were saying, when it comes to education, I see different things I would criticize in society, which we can get into as we define modernity. If we even agree with modernity or want to maybe use post-modernity or super-modernity, we can cross that bridge. But if we do look at this society, so many of the ills that we see in big ways and down to the personal and everything in between, as I see it, have to do with perceptions of knowledge that we get in our youth. Yeah, and youth, we can take that up through the 20s, whatever. The way the way we're taught to learn. I see as being probably more than anything else, and this is what I would define modernity as, and this is the error, whatever the blessings of our day and age and the past epoch of history, this is the error I believe is cutting everything up, cutting reality up into these spheres or these ice cube trays. That's probably more than anything else. Well, for me, what would define modernity, and from this, the errors of this system is that it splits everything. So it splits the soul and the body. It splits knowledge in the way that our modern so-called education system has it, where everything is portioned off. There's a place for focused study, but we are never in our education systems given an integral understanding of reality. The teachers we have no coordination in the knowledge they give, however competent they are. And what that produces, long story short, is a completely shattered perception of life. And rinse and repeat that millions and so-called billions of times over. They tell us there are billions of people on the earth. I don't know, but the point is this system, we've all run through it. It's created not just individuals whose perception of reality is fractal, but whole societies. And we cannot make these connections. And one of those connections, as I put a sock in it and ask you guys to give your own definitions of modernity and your thoughts, one of those divisions is between us, the living generations, and the past generations and the future generations. And that's what I find so insightful about Mmabatho's work, is this, well, to use the classical ancient word, this piety that Mmabatho has, not in a religious sense, but in this very ancient understanding of piety, meaning bloodline connections and that consciousness. So anyway, those are just some thoughts on my end, and I'd be interested, Mmabatho and Ryan, your thoughts on what is modernity and any additional thoughts.
Yeah, a lot of my my outlook, in fact, my outlook on life is very much grounded or rooted in my spirituality. So I have a very deep reverence for what I believe is the divine, and so even in terms of the piety you speak of, For me, I mean, I'm a mother, and one of the things I've always understood from an early time in my motherhood journey is that the children gifted to me are not mine, even though they come through me. But I'm being given an opportunity to help to shape human beings in a way that might be pleasing to God, you know. And God for me is not some being who is looking down on me and looking for a mistake I might make. You know, my relationship with life's creative energy, life's divine energy, the Christ that is often attributed to Jesus, is a bit more complex, you know, and it does include my ancestors and the earth herself. And so, yeah, my outlook on life, my orientation, my commitments to the well-being of humanity stem from a very deep rooted cultural awareness to say, as a mother, my children are not only the ones I've given birth to, but everyone who might look at me and relate to me as a mother, right? And so it then strengthens my own sense of responsibility and my commitment, because I understand my responsibility and obligations, not only from my traditional perspective, but also from my connection with the Divine Mother and the Divine Father. When it comes to the outcomes of modernity, I feel like we tend to focus a lot on the things that are going wrong, and perhaps not enough on finding a dynamic balance around what we might seek to work towards as humanity, you know, particularly those who see something wrong with the kinds of lives that are being pushed on us. So how can our focus shift from where the problem is, and actually how do we work together to design, to co-create different systems, different worlds, different realities? What might that look like, you know? I think there has been a lot of talk and research and publications around the polycrisis, around inequality, around ecological degradation for decades. We are not coming to any meaningful outcomes, right? So how about we change the way we look at things? Because, you know, in my own work, I look at the mind and, you know, what we focus on, and I work with energy. And so where we focus our attention has a lot to do with what we see. You spoke about perception, you know, and the opportunities and the creativity and the sense of solidarity that might emerge from looking at things differently.
Yes, I agree. Sorry, I may be the one with some background noise now. If the men cutting lawns get in the way, please let me know if I'm. Oh, wait,
Hey, just
sorry.
for fun, Ryan, just for fun, up in Canada, Mmabatho can chime in on this too, just for the lawnmowers, because we have these guys around here too. In Canada, I want to know, in South Africa, this has nothing to do with modernity. Do the lawnmowers park their cars and their trailers on the road and unload on the pass-through road, or do they have better manners in Canada and
No,
drive in?
they do that here too.
Okay, we're not alone.
They do that here too. It must be something in the air.
Yeah, they have a badge we don't know about. They can park anywhere. So we raised a few questions. First of all, what is modernity? And I think to properly define that, we have to ask how we got what our sense of civilization is. And you can track this back through history with some degree of accuracy to the Sumerians and potentially non-human entities that were governing us and set down the frameworks that we were to exist upon. It does seem that there have been portions of humanity that understand how we got into this situation, and they have used it to their advantage. They have used it to their advantage through the fabrication of artificial value in currencies, paper, monetary, fiat, debt-based currencies. And that has expedited the degeneration of this entire planet and the separation of person against person, the divide and conquer politics that govern us, because this competition and idea of scarcity was created on an abundant, beautiful, and what could be a paradise planet. And this is why I also like the work of Michael Tellinger, who does incredible work in Africa, creating sustainable communities and planting gardens and trees everywhere, so that food is not something that you have to maintain 3 jobs to provide. And I think that's what's now being felt and is triggering this response from people who are saying, wait a minute, none of this is natural, none of this is good, this is not what I want. It's not what I want for myself, it's not what I want for future generations, it's not what my kids want, it's not what anybody I know wants, it's only what billionaires want. And this is what will require a grassroots response to stop, because they have the money, the guns, the tanks, and all of these things, and they're pushing their agenda forward to control and cull the human populations. So a lot of these things that have developed in Africa have been massive genocidal attacks, but it's going on everywhere. But yeah, in Africa, it's been hit extremely hard, and they've been separated from their history, and on and on and on. So it's an area of the planet that needs healing, and there are people, incredible souls, who have stood up to the challenge. And I think it's important that we try to support these initiatives to bring about a better planet, period. So what is modernity to me? Modernity is a delusion. We're in a collective delusion. And this delusion is that there's scarcity on this planet, that paper printed by hunchback, monstrous bankers is of any value at all, that we have debt that in some way we owe to who? To these invisible entities that control and manipulate the planet. So I see this as a delusion we need to wake up out of. And we need to look around and see that the world produces food for us if we plant it and take care of it. But if we're allowing them to spray the skies and manipulate the environment and control the weather, we've got a problem. So even if we go back to the soil, if we say, get out of our countries, get the hell out, whatever, we still have to stop the manipulation of our environment. And that can't happen with ignorance. We can't say, no, it's not happening. Actually, there's over 86 patents that go back to the late 18th century, 1890s rather, that show weather modification, and it's well demonstrated now. So, I think we have to address that elephant in the room if we want to provide communities the ability to feed themselves, because that's step one. What are the dependencies of a culture? Let's rebuild that structure without the infiltration of control technologies to oppress and enslave us and divide us against each other. And we all know that it doesn't matter what color, what religion you are, there's somebody in your group who will take money to kill somebody else. This has to change. And what I can tell from Mmabatho's speaking, she loves God. She expressed her love for God. Step one. She has self-respect and self-love, enough to care and love others and see her own inner perfection. Step two. Loving others to take care of and not seeing children just as random children. No, her idea is to take responsibility for all children, to love and nurture and accommodate all. And this is, I think, wonderful and shows high spiritual development when you can say you love God, love yourself, and love others. Truly, not just in a predatory or artificial or scammy way. So that's, and so my comments on modernity, there are some good things. Yeah, it should be broken into a million pieces and put back together as a beautiful, fractal, perfect picture of what human civilization could be, not this monstrous, draconian, predatory control system that's being rolled out.
Okay, thank you for that, Ryan. And I have some thoughts, Mmabatho. First, though, I'd like to ask you if you have anything to add to that.
You can proceed. Some of my comments will take us on another path, but
Sure.
I'd
So,
like to hear.
yes. So, just one thing, Ryan, you said Mr. Tellinger. That's the Ubuntu guy. I remember he
Yes,
had some
exactly.
documentaries maybe 10 years ago.
Correct. Yes, he's still at it.
That's good to hear. That's good to
Yeah.
hear. And I think especially your audience, Ryan, will be familiar with Truth Stream Media. I believe the couple are the Dykes, Dykes by last name, and they lately put out a documentary on the infrastructure in America, particularly public transport and private transport, and the roads and all the shenanigans going back to even before the First World War, when it comes to edging out even then electric cars and all of this stuff to funnel everything into a control grid where you have to pay for all this oil and all of this. Very interesting. And it could get very, very frustrating, this documentary, which I'll link below in addition to Mmabatho and Ryan's sites for the audience. This documentary will be linked below. But to both of your observations, when I was watching this presentation, yes, it was galling to see present. Not that it was brand new to me, but to see presented how the tram lines were bankrupted in favor of the automobile and all of this jazz. It was frustrating to see that, but also, and this is what I certainly have gotten from Mmabatho in our conversations in the past, and Ryan as well. That this society that we have and we think is so adamantine, so monolithic, doesn't have to be this way. What we see and whatever may be galling about this and imposed upon us, it is not just the way it is, which is one of, I think, the downsides of modern pedagogy, is it kind of, for various reasons, gives this idea of this monolithic way that the world is, and there's nothing you can do about it. But whether it's this documentary, maybe on the negative presentation, or your insights, Mmabatho and Ryan, this world is not, this control system is not just the way it is. This control system is something we can supervene. We can come over. We can pole vault over, so to speak. This reality that we're presented with as so-called reality, finally, is not the way things need to be, and we have to always keep that spark before us.
I mean, that is absolutely correct, John. Things do not have to be this way. And Ryan mentioned grassroots communities and, people doing things differently. And I think over the years we have seen that political systems themselves are incapacitated and insufficient to take us anywhere, in terms of a better human system, I think we have seen that religion as well has failed dismally at organizing communities, at creating equity, at creating harmony. And so we need to develop the capacity to ask ourselves different questions, to say, what is it that we actually need in order to create different communities or a different society? We cannot go back to times where things were not as globalized. I think in terms of technology, it has got its pros and cons. And yet again, like any resource, like money, capital, it's a resource. And it is up to us to decide how we mobilize that resource. To what end do we use technology? And it takes me to Conscious Conversations, my podcast, which is really a higher educational platform, for research, where I have conversations with scholars, practitioners, healers, people who are really on the ground and whose knowledges have been marginalized, to find out what are they doing that is differently, how are they understanding where we are at right now collectively as humanity. And so that is me using technology to create awareness and to expand on that awareness. And I think that is one of the key things we need to know how to do. When we look at our systems, we need to see where the opportunities are, where we can use these resources for the benefit of the planet and our relationship with the rest of creation. We can speak about capital. We know that money is a resource, money is an idea, and we now know that we don't need physical cash money in order to move resources around. So, in what ways can we think about the division of labor to resolve our problems? In what ways do we share resources amongst ourselves as those who see the problem and who are actively working towards creating different communities and different outcomes? And I think if we were to focus more of our attention and energy on the things we can actually do, how do we consume, what is our own relationship with land, what are some of our own assumptions about each other, what are the things that really keep us from truly seeing other people as we might want to be seen, because those are the basic things that can help us cultivate regenerative forms of living, right? I do not think policies, I do not think politicians, I do not think high level conversations that are highly academic are going to help us move forward. But I think our own conditioning, our own ability to reflect on our own conditioning and our own relationship to the things that are external to us might say a lot, so what might be your relationship with money, or thinking that you don't have money? What is your relationship with your social network? How can you see that differently? And that really speaks to a mindset. How do we move from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset? Because it's all about perception, and it's all about creating a different way of seeing. I think we know that politicians and the billionaires that are running the planet, they know that people are beginning to wake up, or people have been waking up for some time. They know that people are seeing past the illusion, and that is why they are holding on so hard, and they are making sure that people are distracted a lot. Of course, there is human life. Of course, there is, real lives that are affected by what is happening. But I do not think that focusing on them will help us move forward. I think it is initiatives like this, conversations like these, that have got the potential to reach more people, that can help us to help each other think differently, or connect resources globally as well.
Actually, quite profound. There's a lot in there. So one of the things that Mmabatho touched on was the quality of the person, the spiritual state of the individual in the community is going to be the deciding factor in whether these new communities succeed or fail. Because good people generally look out at the world and they want to see the best in others in the world, we can be sometimes blinded by their reality, their spiritual reality, their intellectual reality, their moral reality of individuals. So to funnel humanity from a highly chaotic state of a variety of spiritual, mental, emotional, and situational experiences, we need a framework that will, first of all, deprogram the bad things that shouldn't have been taught, that were taught to people, and to reprogram, at least for voluntary programming, through discipline, through intention, through will, through availability, through mentorship. And that can bring people to a state where they are capable of operating in a different system and have gotten past the previous thinking that we should be killing each other for pieces of paper or blips on a screen. And that's what abundance means or represents, when in reality, abundance doesn't just come in the form of money or blips on a screen. It comes in the form of wisdom, in love, in availability of food, in comfort, in peace of mind and heart and soul. And these are things that are less spoken about. When I talk about abundance, I'm talking about holistic abundance and the wholeness of the individual, not just putting money in their pocket. This is where these movements like Nasara fool people and say, oh, if we just had more money, it would be a perfect world. If this world was injected to the most irresponsible and low frequency individuals and you just give them money, you would have even worse chaos now than ever. That is not the solution. The solution is spiritual, and it comes from the desire of the individual to become better than what they are now. To do that, you have to be able to self-reflect, to examine your belief system, to accept that you've been wrong and want to be right. Without those conditions, the individual will continue to be in a box of conscious, voluntary prison. And that's what we have to free them from. That's the matrix. The matrix is the one that we've been conditioned in our brain that keeps us thinking that we have to comply and operate with this world when it's telling us things that we know are contrary to harmony with the earth, harmony with each other, and harmony among nations and peoples. Obviously, it's not working. It's insanity to continue doing it. Then all it does is serve to weaken all of the people at the bottom of the pyramid and strengthen all of the people at the top that are consolidating power there. The solutions are there and have been for an extremely long time. Primary water, primarywater.org. Drill deep enough, you get really high quality earth structured water. You need food. How do you grow food? You provide safe environments and living soils. This comes from electroculture, remineralization, which is generally simple, not chemicals and not pesticides and all of these things. And now your people are fed. Next, you need energy. And energy has been solved by people all over the world. People like Patrick Riley have released over Unity design drives and didn't try to patent it, just released it to the world. So if you have water, you have food, you have energy, you have civilization. And if that civilization is built by people who have the moral capability to hold it and to continue and strengthen those structures within the generations that follow, then you have a future. But if you miss any one of those things, we're going nowhere. So this is why I've tried to inspire people to hire states since 2009. But is it successful? I mean, more so in the last years. But people really almost want to be slaves. They want to be ignorant. They want to put power into mommy and daddy's state and somebody else's, responsibility. And they don't want to take responsibility for themselves. So we do need an awakening on this planet, and it hasn't happened yet. But I think the sparks are lit, the catalysts are there, the terrain is ripe. It really is just about message penetration and just get enough fires burning, and we'll burn it down, and we'll replace it with something much better, something built for the people, for all of the people, not specifically constructed to fleece and oppress the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So if you try to fix this structure, which is described as a pyramid, you have two doors. One door is mainstream, do what you're told, and door two is the door of the rebel. And you go in through that structure, and there's things that keep screwing you, and at the end of that path, you're shot in the head and nothing changes in the structure. You can't beat this game by playing within it. It's not possible. We have to think outside the box and operate outside of the constructs that they've built for us. Otherwise, we automatically lose. Their entire system is designed to stop reformers. I went into government thinking I could solve things. I got solved. What happens is the problems that are there because somebody wants them there. If you go in and you try and fix that, you're going to be fixed. So we have to be very cautious, and it has to be burning in the hearts of enough people where we make it so at a community level and survive it.
And I will put that primarywater.org site down below. Any thoughts there, Mmabatho?
Yes, Ryan is making me laugh because they also fixed me, you know.
They, you got fixed, eh?
I got fixed. I got fixed. But it's temporary. It's temporary. It was school fees. I was paying school fees. So now I know how to tackle them, you see. And I think, a particular orientation toward life, nothing is permanent. We live within a much bigger cycle, a cosmic cycle, where things are constantly moving. What goes up must come down. And so I think sometimes when we also go through challenges as individuals, we tend to feel sorry for ourselves, and we tend to have a very narrow understanding of what we are experiencing, because at another level, we are also spiritual beings having a human experience. And so I believe in reincarnation, and I believe in the soul's journey, and coming to understand my own cycle within this cosmic journey, and the lessons that I am learning now and what they have to do with the perfection of my soul, and what that might mean for me, as someone who aspires to be a good living ancestor. What it might really mean for me to be aware, conscious of my own weaknesses and my own limitations around unconditional love, because once one has that perspective, our own experiences within this colonization, within the pain, within the trauma, it begins to shift, because the focus becomes something else. And it moves one away from a victim mentality, which is really what we need in order to overcome the system. We need to understand the mental conditioning, as well as the potential of the mind to be a conscious creator. Um, but again, be conscious of the cosmic principles that we are a part of, and as people are wanting to colonize other planets, one really then one gets to think about, okay, so there's activities around exploring other planets, but have people really thought about what they have created on Earth? So if you want to explore another planet, what are some of the conditions that we are failing to address here? But that requires inner work and inner reflection and understanding one's own, what's the word I'm looking for? Involvement in all of this, because we are constantly being given experiences that have the potential to help us look at how we look at other people. So when I look at a person like Donald Trump or Elon Musk, what is my understanding of their psyche? And I really see wounded boys, like really, so empty, such bullies. And we know at a basic level, hurt people. They can have all these millions, but they're clearly not sophisticated thinkers. So we can also see how the notion of money being something that gives you status or that makes you sophisticated, we can see that that is a lie. Because here are people who are said to be the richest in the world, and their thinking is so low level, and we need to treat them as such. I think we tend to give them too much credit. Yes, they are killing people, but we need to see the woundedness in them. We need to see the unsophisticated thinking. Because even if one looks at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I think are a bit distorted, at some point, once your basic or primary needs have been achieved, your life should naturally, in terms of human development, it should be about more than accumulation, right? It should be about other things, that are not material. But here are these ones, they're not, and so we must ask ourselves, what is wrong with these people?
I think again you've touched on something very important there, and that is that uh, gluttony and obsessive greed are seven deadly sins. These are people who have given in to mind viruses, and that's why they are, quote, billionaires, because they will literally do and screw anybody for money. And for some reason, well, I know what it is, it's brainwashing and conditioning. Our civilization looks up to the very worst of us. It's almost like we're all on a plantation and we're looking at who's the best master, the finest dressed master. And we're like, is it Elon Musk? Is it Donald Trump? Is it? And I'm like, do you not realize as a civilization that these are the people that have preyed upon you? They didn't build wonderful companies. They're not nice people. And all of these tech people were put in place as front runners in those companies while secretly working for DARPA and different intelligence agencies. So these guys didn't make anything in their basement. The real inventors and brilliance are people you have never heard of and never will. The people who get the claim, and they're the Ronald McDonald figureheads for those organizations. And now we're looking at, why do we keep having these injured people? The reason they do child-based trauma is because they make wounded, fearful, manipulable puppets that they can wield. That's why they do that. That's why they propagate it down into schools. They try and infect it with hurting children young. If you can do that, what you do is you create a victim for life who is eternally scared, who is not broken because they're broken as children, and is going to be a perfect little brick in the system that's used for control. They'll do whatever they're told. They can be frightened into doing anything you want, which is why these blackmail systems are so effective, because they're taking already messed up people, making them get even more messed up, filming it. Now they have total control of these people. We wonder why the world is the way it is because people, like Mmabatho said, hurt people, and these people serve their desires, their carnal desires, and that's it. And if you don't truly believe in reincarnation or God, then you're going to fear death. Well, there's a reason we speak out. It's because we know there is another side, and that this game is one of souls, not of money. It doesn't show up as a value on the screen. It shows up in a value of the soul, and that transcends the individual life and carries into the next. It is the perfection of the soul. That's what this journey is about. That's why people like us are different, because we understand that, and these billionaires don't. They don't get it. Or they get it and they've done so much evil that they're like, well, I don't want to ever die because I'm screwed if I die and I come back a earthworm or something, right? So, but yes, sorry. Go ahead, John.
May I quickly, sorry, John,
Yes,
I
yes.
think they do get it. I think they do get it, and that is why they have worked so hard to ensure that all the spiritual traditions are suppressed. And even, the idea of who Jesus was, they went and they changed the entire story. The idea of removing the divinity from a human being is all part of the narrative of ensuring that people are always dependent. People think they do not have direct access to divinity or to the abundance of creation, right? So multiple things have been used, and I think the greatest weapon has been our spiritual disconnection, because our spiritual disconnection is really the idea of agape love. If you think about what would make us to not harm each other, is if we saw our own humanity in each other. But like you say, for as long as we see each other as enemies, as threats, then our spiritual essence becomes fractured. And that is where they are controlling us. They are controlling the narrative of what we are, who we are. And so that becomes a problem. And I think for as long as we are not asking ourselves the right questions, we will always be, playing around the issue and not really addressing the root cause. And it takes me to the core of my research, which is the spiritual fragmentation, really. So what happens when we have been spiritually wounded or fragmented, and what does it take to return back to ourselves, and by saying returning back to ourselves, that actually means returning to the all, returning to the one, returning to the divine. And so that also becomes a process. And I think many people don't want to do that work because it's easy to be a victim. It's easy to complain. It's easy to be able to say, but the government should, or somebody else should. It's easy to do that, and that is why many people don't do it. That is why it took one person all those centuries ago to die for our sins. And I think that idea as well of how the Jesus story has been framed, it's like it makes him something that was just dropped onto the earth, as opposed to a human being who had a human experience and who decided, that he was going to represent something different. And so it makes people to not think that they have the capacity to become that, to embody that, and you look at, for example, the Catholic Church, for instance. If really religion in its current form had the capacity to help us reconnect to who we are, then we should have had so many people who are doing amazing things, because one of the basic laws is that love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so if we understood just that one basic principle, then we would have a completely different society. We would have a completely different relationship, with each other. And so we have been dehumanized, we have been made to not see our own divinity. And I think that is the big onto-epistemic problem. And spirituality is not religion. Spirituality expresses itself in so many different ways, including indigenous knowledge systems, including the relationship we might have with nature and other living beings. Yesterday I was thinking about the idea that in African cosmology, in Zulu, we have a concept of umkati, which is space, which means that my ancestors knew that there was something called space, and there were living beings in space. And we have legends and mythologies that speak to other life forms in space. When we speak to the idea of great ancestors, they are above. There's a distinction between ancestors who really lived well and who really embodied ubuntu. They embody something different. And so we've always been aware of other living beings, Some people might think of angels. Now we hear, a lot of stories around extraterrestrial beings. We have known that there are other life forms, but I think the way we also think of what we call artificial life form or um, um, uh, other beings, I personally have had experiences with light beings. And just like there is darkness and light, I think we are faced with that same challenge, to say we live in a very dynamic universe. And so, can we have the humility to know that we don't know as much as we think we know, and perhaps to try and be different kinds of beings, be more curious, be, more open to understanding others, being more open to really asking yourself, was I right? Was my reaction, was my response appropriate in this situation? Could I do this differently? Could I be different, in this scenario? And what does that different mean? What kind of values are attached to that different? And I think for as long as we are looking for a savior, we will not get it. It's the same with Black politics. So many struggle heroes, whether you're looking at the United States, people like Martin Luther King and others who were assassinated because they had the courage to speak out, because they were selfless, and because people are always quick to put you on a pedestal and say you must do it. And you ask yourself, but why are you not doing it? So again, it speaks to human agency. What do we think we are capable of? Do we really believe we are powerless, and we can't save ourselves? And so what kind of parent does it then make us? So those become my personal questions, when I think about what am I leaving my children with, what do I stand for, and what will those I leave behind say about me and how I lived?
They'll probably mischaracterize you. They won't understand you unless they're at the same level. That's why judgment from peers is important. But judgment of a kindergarten student being told by the teacher that they can't eat ice cream and roll around in poop, then, we're at a different level where we know things and people are going to misunderstand that. That's why the message of, we'll call him Jesus, but we know that wasn't his name, but there was a lot there. So you've touched on so much. This is my top level of conversations. Thank you both. I love the topics. I just want to thank you because these are the things I super duper enjoy talking about. So let me just, first of all, the agape is ancient Greek. There's many different terms for how you love, and selfless love, unconditional love is agape, and it's the attempt to just love as the creator God would love everything. And I think as you start to see creation and love creation as the divine consciousness does, that's when you start to embody it. But the process to get there is long, and most people don't want to do the work. And what Mmabatho was talking about, putting people back together because we're all fractured, is the first step. How you have to know that you're wrong about probably most of the things you believe until you've done the introspection and looked inside to see your own programming, to actually, from a third party, from a detached perspective, examine your life and your behaviors and your relationships, then you're going to have a skewed version of it. This is why there's so many, I support, a lot of medicinal herbs and mushrooms for people to get that in a therapeutic way, to get that perspective and have that detachment, to look at one's self and to ask if that's all they want from themselves. And this brings people onto the path of self-development. What is that about? That's about bringing harmony back to the energetic chakras, the system that reflects your soul through your body. You want to get that as clear. You want to clear the temple as much as possible to bring as much of that divine energy and that spark through into who you are today. not just it's in there somewhere buried in the dirt. No, you want to shine. So to do that is the reharmonization and reassembly of the fractured person, and all the detached things and whatever genetic experiments they've done, the genes that they've messed with and turned off in us, or the things that we've forgotten. Because as we see, just in one generation, we've gone from, GPS, cell phones, artificial intelligence. How is that going to transform the brain and the biology of humans in the future? So what has been done to us to make us this detached from reality? Well, it's shoes, it's belts, it's food, it's processed food, it's poison in it, it's all these different things, right? So putting all that back together for a lot of people does start with their religious systems. Now, I love all of the ancient texts. I love it. I read it all. I have a different perspective because I've covered a broader frame of reference, so I understand what actual topics they're trying to convey are, and where parties would have manipulated, mistranslated, and deviated the message. We are all sparks of the divine and all have the same capacity to manifest the Christ consciousness through us. It comes from doing the work and perfecting your energy and letting it through, like I just described. And that comes with your state of mind in terms of your love. That's why love God, love yourself, love others. I can get it. I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I know we're limited on time, but there's so much I'd like to continue talking about with you both, but I know we're a bit limited. So that is what's going to get people rebuilt again. But unless they're willing to do that introspection work and to look inside and to accept the facts that the religions that we've been practicing have universally been interfered with. That's just you need to understand that this idea of Jesus is a caricature of many different individuals. Like if I took Superman, Batman, Hamburglar, and Ronald McDonald and put them together in one character and called him Barney Rubble, and he was really an amalgam of these different characters. Now, what is the point? Was there beauty in the message? Absolutely, read it. And what I see is most people of their own faith haven't read their own scriptures. Muslims have read their own scriptures way too much. Yeah, slow down. Got to read some other books, okay? But for Christianity, I'm shocked how many times I speak to Christians and they know absolutely nothing about the text that all of this originates from. And the difference between the Old and New Testament, this is a different God. This is Yahweh, which is an Anunnaki, and Jesus trying to teach Christos consciousness. Basically, Western Buddhism is what he was trying to teach with an astro-theological bent and with the understanding of reincarnation, how energy works, how healing works, and basically all of those types of things. So when you understand it like that and you read the books that were left out, the Gnostic and the Dead Sea Scrolls, you get an understanding. Oh, I get it now. So now you're like, okay, so the religious authorities tried to make us believe that we are, again, sinners at birth, that we're evil. We're fractured at birth. This is true. We have to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, but we're not born evil. And we don't need the blood of a savior to cleanse us. You need to perfect your temple and do your own heavy lifting and realize that if you do the heavy lifting, there is a reward at the end of that pathway. And it is the hard road, but it is the only road that leads to reconnection with the divine source. And that ultimately leads to the throne of God, where we all go back to once we've finished our incarnations and all of these repeated experiences over and over again. That's where we go back to. So the question becomes to the person, how long do you want this to take? Do you really want to dwell in ignorance? Do you really want to dwell in suffering? Because there's two ways that human civilization will learn. In times of prosperity, they will, of their own volition and free will, develop and grow, or in times of suffering. So if you don't take the good times and use it to grow, then what's going to come right around the corner is suffering. It's going to force you to grow. So this is what I would like to leave as a message to people is that, the easy road is actually the hard road. The hard road is actually what looks like the easy road. So once you understand those things and you see how these rules of the universe govern us all, none of us escape our karma. There's no such thing as escaping your karma. We reap what we sow, period. So you reap wickedness, you will sow wickedness. You reap goodness, you will eventually. Maybe not this life. For us, I think it might be mostly a dead end. But next life, it'll be great. It'll be great.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Ryan and Mmabatho. And as we wind things down here, perhaps we can resume this talk in a few weeks or a few months, convenient to us. And should we do that, I might suggest as a show topic, and should we not do that, we can just all chew over this this ongoing homework as we consider belonging in modernity. 2 points.
Sorry,
Go on.
Sorry, you just cut out there, John, for a second. I don't know if that was just for me, but the last
Sure.
second.
Where did I cut out?
With the new proposed belonging in what?
Belonging in modernity. So this is the umbrella topic, and perhaps we'll resume this on a recording. Perhaps it'll just be homework for us and the audience. But 2 points within this topic. One of which is how this system, this control system, whether that's civil or economic or spiritual, whatever, how it takes good things or reactions oftentimes to their mischief and turns it against us. Again, divide and conquer. For example, Mmabatho began with her comments on motherhood, something to the effect of, she's raising this child, but this child is coming from a larger tradition. And that may not be the most accurate way, but is it appropriate to say that, Mmabatho?
Yes, it is.
Here in America, there was, in my opinion, a despicable political couple in the 1990s who the wife of this couple, who was a prominent politician, subsequently said, it takes a child to raise a village. And there's a very pietistic and wholesome truth to that. But in the context of this country, that immediately caused a polar reaction. So there is, I believe, a truth to that. It takes a child to raise a village. But because of the individual that was saying this, and because of the larger political soup this person represented, that has, in the past 30 years, created the opposite reaction, this hyper individuality when it comes to child rearing. So that's one example how this system, and it may be preternatural. The individuals, the chess pieces, may have no idea, what these dynamics whatsoever. It may not be conscious on the part of what this woman said and the attention and the results of it. But anyway, that was the result, is people reacted against the truth. Here's another example. And I'll continue my overall point and kick it to you for the final remarks. I'm finishing an essay right now, and my thesis that in the wake of these tremendous crimes against children and against other people, criminality, a combination, that's a legal term, these like mafias, these Epstein, P. Diddy, and all of this stuff. What this has created is an equal error, and that is people have seen this, and now they've reacted so much into child protection that this is being used to hang us. Particularly, you can see this with internet regulations, right? The digital ID is not coming from the leftists or whatever we thought was going to be the tool. It's coming from the family values people. Oh, I got to protect my child from strangers on the internet. I guarantee you the people that are pushing this do not care about your children whatsoever. But because we have seen the criminality and we have seen genuine problems, we overreact. And this damn system has made accounting for that overreaction. And we could do more. I could give 100, Ryan could give 1,000, Mmabatho 10,000 examples. NATO destroyed the North African countries and the globalists. And because of that, these poor people have flooded into Europe. They've been abused upon. Now the Europeans, they're fed up. That creates a pushback on the part of the Europeans. And it's all divide and conquer. So I'll just put a sock in it here. The first point is, how in modernity do we stay sober when this is clearly, as I see it, this is clearly a tool that it creates these reactions, and oftentimes our own reaction to this system will hang ourselves in various ways. And then the other thing is like the flip side of this coin, belonging in modernity. In our own work, I can tell you, and you can share whatever you want in the future right now about our works, but we have had to deal with the power structure in academia, for example, or my work, lately this year with the college, trying to figure out the finances with the stock market, soon enough with grants, how do we negotiate power structures as they exist? If we refuse to interact with these things whatsoever, we become, naturally speaking, completely irrelevant. There are groups in this country even that have done that. They've decided to secede completely from society, and their great message has gone nowhere because of it. And so those are the 2 points that maybe make a good show in the future to reprise this, or maybe just make some good homework for us to think about in the audience. Again, how do our own reactions hang ourselves to this system? And then how do we negotiate with power? And those are my final points. Mmabatho and Ryan, your final thoughts?
Sure, those are such rich provocations, John. And, they're too delicious. I can't not comment on them. I think it takes us back to the fundamental gist of our conversation and some of the comments from both Ryan and myself around self-knowledge, and what anchors us, or what are we anchored in? Because if we are controlled by our addictions, whether it is to shopping, whether it is to sports cars, whether it is to the latest whatever, whether it is to consumption, then we will continue to be trapped in this crazy cycle. And so it dealing with modernity requires a lot of honesty with the self, not with other people particularly, but with yourself. Because if you're honest enough with yourself, then it will be reflected in your outer relationships. And then secondly, negotiating with power. Many people who are on spiritual journeys tend to completely want to get out. And I think part of what we know about Earth is that it is one of the most difficult planets in our cosmic ecosystem. And so I think we need to participate in life. It is part of living, and depending on your orientation, for me, this is also about self-actualization. And so knowing that I was born for a time such as this, where I will be faced with challenges that are meant to deter me from fulfilling my purpose. So understanding it at a spiritual and at a material level, how it manifests itself, it means that I cannot not participate. It means I cannot not work within, in between, around these systems, because that will also show a sense of strategy. It's also the art of war. If you want to think about it in more radical terms, is we are in a spiritual war. And so how does it manifest itself? It manifests itself exactly as these challenges we are faced with, exactly as the kind of power structures we are faced with, and playing chess with them, finding innovative ways, creative ways, having other allies, and those become the other spiritual forces that one can work with to ensure that we are able to do what we have been called to do in this lifetime.
Wow. So let me start. The topics John brought up were about, if we don't engage the system, then we lose control of it. I would describe it more as the system being designed to harvest resistance. So within the structure, friction between bricks creates the movement of energy. The movement of energy is siphoned upon to channel to the top. The more friction, the more siphoning of energy. Any happening or change to the structure goes through strategic analysis. Now I'll talk about the past. In the past, how that would work, let's say a major social or strategic geopolitical issue would be brought up to a council of highly intelligent human beings, like almost not like the average person in any way, shape, or form. And the question would be, how can we spin X, whatever it is? And they would come up with a series of ways to do geopolitical social engineering Tai Chi on it, to take what is a positive intention of an organization, to co-opt it from the top, and to steer it into a direction from which they capitalize and further strengthen and grow the system. Which is why I believe that the Epstein entire fiasco is not the result of white hats. It may be the result of white hats who think they're doing good but are being contained in the system I am describing. It is like a hot air balloon. If you are in a hot air balloon and you only operate within the hot air balloon and you generate more heat, what happens? More lift, more building of the system. The entire system is brilliantly designed. The art of war is just the start. Add Edward Bernays in that, and Mind Wars from that Satanist Aquino. When you start adding all of these things into the recipe, and now you add artificially intelligent strategic platforms that have existed, according to Juan O'Savin, since the 80s, and I will say at least since 2000, it has been there. And they can print out all of the ways or read out all of the different ways that AI would say, how do we respond to this happening? So how do you respond to a system that is infinitely more intelligent and resource rich than you and is always going to win because they just have more people, more money, more intelligence? You can't win against that system. The only way to win against a system like that is to not fight the system from within the system. Come at the system in an out-of-band way. So when Mmabatho talked about assisting beings, connecting with non-human intelligences, using our spiritual gifts, using our psychic gifts in a targeted strategic way, these are out-of-band ways of addressing this problem. But going at it head on is not going to work. So if we have a flag and there's 3 roads that get us to the flag and we need the flag, the enemy is going to defend those 3 roads. So how do you get the flag? They've got a razor blade fortress to get to the flag. You can't go through the razor blade fortress. You either get to somebody on the inside who takes the flag, like a John McAfee, and that almost went well, because he got all of their secrets. He had the real secrets, and he was going to release it. But they literally took down a building with an energy weapon to stop that dead man switch in Florida. Or you have to think out of the box. Can you influence people that are on the other side of the wall? But the way through is not the razor blade fortress. There's no way through the razor blade fortress. It is designed as a series of barriers to stop that and to capitalize from your blood. When the razor blades cut you, they can harvest your blood, metaphorically, of course, and they will use it to rebuild the system and make the razor blades stronger. That's not the way. We don't win by going at them head on where they're strong. That's not the way. We can't win like that. We can only win by thinking out of the box and using our God-given gifts and our own personal purity. That's why it's important to not lie and to be truthful. But to be quite honest myself, being truthful has really messed up my life, because people are just liars, and they just are. And if you're not, then they want to get rid of you because you're not a liar. So if soon as a liar finds out that you're a truth teller, they're like, we need this guy the F out of here. Get him out of here. Use the door, his head to open the door on the way out. And that's what happens. So good luck trying to actually embody integrity and honor and truth and love in this world. No, you're going to get screwed. But next life. So I'm gambling on the next life, folks.
But yeah, we met, right? So the ecosystems are working, people are connecting,
Yes.
like-minded and like-hearted people are increasingly connecting. So I think the onus is on us to continue to cultivate and strengthen our awareness, and as you said, um, work with the energies and with our own purity to bring to life, to co-create the communities we want, the global communities we want, that are actually effective and that are working, so that we do not have to feel like we are living in an untruthful world. Because I've had struggles with that, with being transparent and being honest. But I understand why that exists as a problem, and I also see how the universe is helping me and bringing different people from different parts of the world who share the same values as me. So we always need to see, how nature is supporting us, and I'm very grateful for this conversation, John, and I'm very grateful for having met you, Ryan. It's also so nice to be able to speak openly about these things with people who have done the work, who understand, as opposed to just speaking about it from a new culture, pop culture point of view. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I would love also to have another talk, and I would love to hear about light beings and any and more about what you do. I think we got a good introductory talk, but yeah, I want to hear more, and I would love to do another talk with you both.
Excellent. And I'll invite Mmabatho and Ryan to tell us about their websites, and perhaps Mmabatho, your class, anything else you might have coming up, Ryan. My final point before the sign off is simply we had a reference of John McAfee, Lord of mercy on him. You young guys don't know about John McAfee. You can look him up, and then the only thing that comes to mind when I think of that fella was two guys from the medieval times. The only closest thing would be Richard the Lionheart or Frederick II. So you can do your homework. He was a character. That guy was a character altogether. So anyway, Mmabatho and Ryan, tell us about your class, Mmabatho, your website, and then Ryan the same, whatever you may have coming up.
More about my work can be found on www.montsem, that's MONTSEM.com. I'm sure John will have it, written out below. And I offer, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, holistic sort of like work, from helping people to understand their values to helping those who are transitioning. I'm also gifted in terms of seeing connections when it comes to enterprises that might work together. One of the things I'm doing right now is sensing into how to best create an entrepreneurship ecosystem in a way that bridges higher education as well as grassroots communities. That speaks to healing, because I think if we do not understand where the root problem is, then all our interventions will almost be surface level. So having an integrated way of looking at the human experience in a way that is regenerative and that is life affirming. Like I said, more of my work can be found on my podcast. We are renegotiating the dates for the educational offering, and that I was supposed to facilitate from the 6th of June. I think, we need a bit more time to get it out there. I'm sure John will also have more details on his website about that particular offering. It is work that I love a lot. It is work that helps to sustain me. And so, please have a look at the website and the details on John's website for more information.
Mbatho, if I could just add a few things to that, because you had mentioned everybody needing to make a living, and that is super important. Might I suggest that you build at least a dependency and requirement pyramid for businesses. So certain businesses can be done at a certain level, like you can grow beans, you don't need any infrastructure. But then as you start going higher, there's different components that you need. And if you set up businesses and help people train to make a living for themselves in their communities in a structured way, you don't come against these hard bottlenecks or breaks, and you can build in a structured and well thought out strategic way. If you need any assistance, or the continent needs any of that assistance, I do that kind of strategic thinking standing on my head. So it's no problem to work that out. But it's a very important initiative, because if people don't have a way to make a living and sustain their dependencies, then you don't have anything. So that's really the first things to address, and there has to be the will and the manpower and woman power to actually drive those initiatives forward. But if there's ever anything I can do, you just let me know. I'm also very connected to people all around the world that are good people of divine inclination that want to help the world. So if you need contacts or there's anything you're looking for, don't hesitate to reach out, because I might be able to assist in some way, shape, or form. For my personal website right now, naturalintelligencenews.com, I'm working with hopefully Lee Romanoff and some influencers, helping them basically back up their channels and platforms, because if they could be deplatformed, then their entire following disappears in a night. So you have 1 million followers, but if they haven't gone over to your site and you're not in some way making a few bucks off of referrals and things like that, you're not going to make it in this field. You're going to be living under a bridge like Dr. Ross and or in an apartment or a storage unit like Jordan Maxwell or whoever. We have to be able to sustain ourselves. And the last thing I'll just add about Africa is they can completely resolve the monetary debt issue if they went with a structure that gold backs. Goldbacks.com is an organization that takes gold and infuses it into currency notes. If you do that and produce it yourself in your own continent, you don't need any bankster, gangster, globalist, any of this Swiss octagon crap. You can do and exchange value with one another on a material you produce on your own continent, a currency where you produce yourself. The value is in the currency, so it can't be hyperinflated and deflated. That's the magic bullet to kill those bastards. So if Africa took that on, you could remove yourself from the taskmaster's whip and these bankster gangsters. So that would be my suggestion. I also run what's called Truth Addicts Anonymous, which is a support group for people who are awake and of our particular mindset that need to just speak to other people that live in our reality and not the construct, and need to just talk and vent and whatever, share research, make connections and friends. It's really quite wonderful. And again, I do consulting, business and personal. I'm very into sustainable agriculture and things like that, and rebuilding soil, especially reclaiming it from glyphosate and all these different poisons and things like that. I have a particular interest in, since all of North America has been toxified with this garbage and dioxins, and it's unbelievable. So I think we really do have to start with the soil. We have to bring life back to the dirt. We have to bring life back to the water. And these are things that we have to do to survive. So I think that that's kind of a lot of what I do. Has it been super successful? I don't know. But that's it. Thank you, folks. And I was very encouraged by the talk. And actually, I feel much happier now. I was a bit bummed out this morning, but it's just wonderful to talk to people that are on the right side of helping this planet and not being just order following mental cases. So thank you both. You're lovely human beings, and I appreciate being a part of this conversation this morning.
And for the audience, all those links are down below. And indeed, Mmabatho and Ryan, thank you so much for your time today.